special welcome to His Excellency Usman Sulaiman, Ambassador of the Republic of Kazakhstan. Also special welcome to His Excellency Andrei Tatarinov, Ambassador of the Federal Republic of Russia. Ambassador, welcome. And also special welcome to the Ambassador of the Republic of Costa Rica, His Excellency Jairo Hernandez Milan. And finally, His Excellency Roberto Blanco Dominguez, Ambassador of Cuba. I'll just say a few quick words about our speaker today. As usual, the rule in the school is about three things. So the first thing is about Kazakhstan and Singapore. Singapore is a small country. Kazakhstan is one of the biggest countries in the world. But the relationship with Kazakhstan and Singapore is unusually very close and very warm. You can ask our speaker today why that is so. Second, the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy has been working in Kazakhstan in the last 8 years, helping to set up the School of Public Policy in Kazakhstan. On the third point, I've known our speaker for the last 4 or 5 years, and I've seen him in action. Our speaker today is Kairat Kelembitov, but he's probably the top economic technocrat in Kazakhstan, I would say that. He has worked at the President's office. He has run the Sovereign Wealth Fund. He was Deputy Prime Minister, Finance Minister, Economic Minister, Central Bank Governor. Now his job is to create the Astana International Financial Center. And you can name every big economic policies in Kazakhstan. He's probably behind those policies. So without much further ado, I'd like to turn on the floor to Governor Kairat.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to talk here in the Lee Kuan Yew School. It's actually, we here in Singapore, a big delegation from Astana International Financial Center. I just think that half of the people here is a team of Astana International Financial Center. Thank you very much to come. And together with Lee Kuan Yew School and our colleagues from the government agencies here, we try to realize what is the key success ingredients of Singaporean Financial Center. It's quite challenging to know how the entire system, very sophisticated system, is working. So I try maybe a little bit to share what we understood this week. But there's also kind of great opportunities to present our views on our development. In the second part of my presentation, I would like to explain more in details about our initiative, Astana International Financial Center, which is very similar to what was recently done in GCC region in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. Actually, today I would like to talk a little bit about institutions and building of institutions and building capacity in Kazakhstan. And here we have a kind of interesting experience to share. I think it's difficult to explain in Singapore, which is the country which is always in top 3 or mostly number 1 in the world in terms of any competitiveness report in any ranking system. I think that we are more in a group of starting from 30, 35, 40. Before we was in a second 50 group of countries. But anyway, I think a lot of similarities, and for I think the practitioners and for scholars here will be kind of one more idea to just to realize kind of theoretical and practical implication of the development of institution. So when we're talking about, so before let me just briefly explain the where we are from. I know that more people from Central Asia here, but maybe for the other will be also important to know that we are post-Soviet Union countries. So this year we celebrate 25 years of our independence, and so the 25 years of the social and economic structural reforms in Kazakhstan. So where we are now, we are in terms of the, we are kind of the upper income group of countries with a GDP per capita more than 10,000 US dollars. So in PPP terms, it's even more. You see kind of 24,000 US dollars. When we start our journey of independence, the GDP per capita was the lowest among all post-Soviet Union countries in Kazakhstan. It was just $700. So right now we are in top 3, or let's say together with Russian Federation, we are leaders in terms of economic development in our region. And from very beginning, we start to do the many reforms, because Kazakhstan before didn't have a kind of experience of good governance. We were kind of depends from the central government in Soviet Union those time. So it was very important to prepare ourselves to kind of current understanding. So how to manage the government, how to run a country. And for us, is always where kind of the key principles was to bring best international practice. I think here we learn much more from the countries in Southeast Asia. We study the experience, both positive and negative experience. And always Singapore was like a kind of benchmark to Kazakhstan. And so let me even start from this kind of situation. What we learn from our colleague here, the Singapore in the future wants to be London of Southeast Asia. So what if in the same analog, we want to be Singapore in Central Asia for Kazakhstan. So that's why it's very important was to learn about institutions here. So I'm sure you know this book is my favorite book. Professor Acemoglu from MIT actually wrote about the nature of the institutions, and he divided like for exclusive and extractive institutions. So the developed countries have a very good structure of institutions which were built within, in some countries, within 100 years. And institutions always help for the further development. And lack of institutions is also create a problem. And we're going to talk about this on a case of Kazakhstan. And in terms of the if you don't have any kind of really good working institution which will solve your problem, so you always kind of face different challenges. One of the key challenges for Kazakhstan, like a mineral resource rich country, is always kind of rent-seeking behavior and not kind of focusing on the particularly priorities of economic development. So when we're talking about good institutions, so I think that these institutions should kind of decide the particularly focus on the decision of a particular problem, which is kind of should be problem specific, problem driven, have kind of the opportunities to work on iterative approach, so to improve itself, should always constantly evolving and helps to build the human capacity. And also, I think it's a good also to talk today about the institution who not really kind of create big shocks for the population. And so today we will talk a little bit about kind of about dilemma is two approaches, which is one is so-called PDIA, problem-driven iterative approach, and the second is solution-based simple approach. So with a dilemma, you probably know the professor of Matthew Andres from Kennedy School of Harvard University, who are kind of one of the most fellow of the recent development of this agenda. So just give you some example in terms of what's the difference between two approaches. On the case of the first reforms which was done in Kazakhstan, we in the mid of the 90s, we did many structural reforms. So we did banking reform, we did a privatization, we did pension reform. The key role of pension reform was just move from the existing those time model post-Soviet Union model, the pension system, which famous like a pay-as-you-go system or solidarity system, to the new system, which is a fully funded system. And those time, World Bank recommend us to use the Chilean experience. And so the Chile was the most successful reformer in this area. And so these are kind of a very good example of solution-based reform. So we just took the Chilean experience and tried to implement it in Kazakhstan. And I'm sure that we understand that the Chile, let's say in those time, and Kazakhstan in late 90s, it's two different countries. So let's say what were problems which we faced, you see in a kind of in a red colors. So first of all, coverage. So until now, we didn't kind of yet achieved the full coverage of the population. So we have a kind of 1/3 of the people in Kazakhstan not really involved to the system, where they have to contribute part of their salaries to their future savings. The second is underdeveloped stock market. So those time when the Chile implement the system, they have more or less developed a stock market, and all the savings which were collected by the particular pension funds being invested to the particular tools in a stock exchange. We didn't have yet the developed stock exchange. That's why this reform was kind of postponed and a little bit, let's say, failed on certain stage of the development. And also maybe the culture of the pension funds. The pension funds were very active in Kazakhstan, but because of the lack of the corporate governance, they actually failed. And in a period when was the Lehman Brothers collapse, it was a huge also influence to the financial sector in Kazakhstan, and mostly the pension funds failed. So this is one more time demonstrate actually that we just solution-based decision, not specifically focused on the particular problem, not driven by the problems which we have in Kazakhstan, is not always working perfect. So this is kind of one of the example of solution-based decision. Sometimes solution-based decisions are working. So I have two examples for you, which is where we have a positive kind of result of the solution-based decision. We will talk a little bit about scholarship, famous presidential scholarship, Bolashak in Kazakhstan. So for those of you who knows Singaporean system, it's very much similar to Public Service Commission scholarship program. So the government of Kazakhstan, by initiative of the president of our country, try to send as much as possible young, talented, bright students to the top 100 universities in the world. And this program was started in 1993. In 2004 and 2005, this program was increased up to the 3,000 students per year. And we already have alumni or the graduates of this program, which is around more than 10,000 students. We have even 11,000 graduates already. And we sent them to the top universities in the world. Part of my team also graduates of the Bolashak program. So we study in all the famous universities, starting from business school in Harvard, Kennedy School in Harvard, Stanford, Yale, Princeton. And we are proud of them because we were very kind of, so first of all, we were very good students, and right now we're kind of the very good fellows of the Kazakhstani government. And so again, it's kind of an example. It was good experience in some Southeast Asia countries. And when even in whatever kind of, and by the way, we have a very good legacy in terms of the education system, post-Soviet Union education system. So the people in Kazakhstan were very well educated, and high schools taught students very good math and physics, so they were kind of successful on these terms. But the new institutions which came actually supported, and then it was kind of a very good implication of this. I will come back to this in a second part of my lecture. Or the second case of the successful solution-based decision. You know that Kazakhstan is more famous in terms of the mineral resource-rich country. So I think we are kind of similar to early stage of the development of Australia or Norway, or even more Australia, because we are not just oil-rich country, but we also rich in terms of the mining. We are in top 20 oil producers in the world with a 1.6 million barrel per day. We're gonna double this number in nearest future. And also we are number one of raw materials exporting uranium, which is, for example, Australia is just number 2. So we have a kind of a many diversified economy, but based on the mineral resources. And having in mind that we mostly, the all economists knows this discussion about oil curse. So all the countries which actually have the oil resources are not dynamically developed, and they kind of the development of these much lower rates than the countries without any resources. I think the Singapore is the number 1 countries which actually shows that not having resources, I think, is kind of blessing, but not the curse. And having resources is more kind of the headache in terms of how to manage a wealth, actually, which is coming to the country. And we decided to follow the best solution, and solution was proposed by the Norwegian Oil Fund. Right now, the name of this fund is a Norwegian Global Pension Fund. So there was a decision that we should not depend from the oil revenues in a budget system. So we should withdraw all the oil and gas taxes to the special fund, which would be out of the budget system of Kazakhstan. So we create the, let's say, special account of the Ministry of Finance, and we call it National Fund. And the government, since very beginning, sent all the oil and gas taxes to the special fund. And this fund, so this was the first decision. So we decided that this money will be managed by Central Bank of Kazakhstan. I think this is something in between, if in Singapore, MIS or GIC manage this money for the government. So this is also kind of similar model on this. And, but from the other side, we have a kind of this, from each year we have a special transfer from the national fund to the budget. This allows us to sterilize all these oil revenues and not to allow to kind of have problems of the Dutch disease, which is the other problem of the strengthening of the exchange rate of the local currency, which completely can destroy the attempts to diversify economy or to create non-oil subsectors of our economy. So this model working very well. We started from first 600 million US dollars. Right now we have a 65 billion US dollars. If you will kind of also bring 30 billion of the reserves of central bank, so we have a kind of the reserves of the country around 100 billion US dollars, which is among the oil-rich countries in top 10 position. And I think that we kind of proud that we, first of all, save the money of the future generation, and the second, to build kind of a good macroeconomic environment. So these are kind of 2 examples when the solution-based decision was appropriate for Kazakhstan. I should give you some geopolitical context where we are and what is the kind of our market environment. We are kind of, we are part of Central Asia community, which is also the other countries, you know, like Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and Kyrgyzstan. Broader Central Asia also includes maybe some markets in Iran and Afghanistan and Mongolia. We're also part of the very famous initiative in Kazakhstan of our president of creation Eurasian Economic Union. It's a very similar integration like was done in EU last 50 years, when the first of all, 3 countries, Russia, Belarus, and Kazakhstan, later on the Armenia and Kyrgyzstan also joined to this, create a kind of the custom union plus agreement. So right now the Eurasian Economic Union in negotiation with Singapore in terms of the free trade agreement as well. So these are market like 180 million people, which is kind of create opportunities for the local industry to develop. But from the other side, I think is also more interested for Singaporean business because the Singaporeans are always try kind of to navigate trade around China and compete with the other jurisdiction on this. We are kind of key part of the Chinese government initiative, One Belt, One Road, which is, kind of restoring the ancient Silk Road trade and connecting some cities like in the center of China with cities in Middle East, like in Iran or Eastern Europe. And so this is also was a part of reform when we outsource our trade policy to a Eurasian Economic Union, which is from one side kind of do your trade policy less flexible, but from the other side open the access of the Kazakhstani business to the much bigger, 10 times bigger market. So back to the kind of nature features of the good institutions, I would like just to say that whatever, if you have a kind of simple problem, so probably the solution-based decision will be appropriate, but you have a really more complicated problem with kind of the lack of the previous institution framework, so definitely your decision should be more problem-specific, more problem-driven, and more kind of have a different iterative approach to, at the end of the day, to come to the right formula. And so here, which we learn from our experience, is always better to focus on human capacity and try to avoid the shocks. So you remember probably was a kind of very famous shock therapy philosophy when was reforms done in Chile and was authoritarian regime over there, and the first reforms in Eastern Europe, in Poland and Czech Republic. So right now, I think we are living in a time where the shock reforms is not any more appropriate for our countries, and we have to think about some kind of the other type of therapy, which will be my kind of final conclusion today. So again, so from one side, if you have very good institutions, like for example, in Singapore was already established rule of law, you have a legacy of the British Empire, it was a good court system and everything. And then it's very is kind of easier to graft some kind of the new products. For example, if you will take kind of the apple tree and we have a new variety and we have a kind of the existing garden, so we have just take some particularly branch and then put it in some other tree, and then we will get some kind of the new variety. So here is kind of a very kind of favorable environment, and you can do it easy. And which was the example, like I mentioned, like Bolashak and our national fund. So no problem kind of to create a new system. And the other way is like when you have a you want to kind of to build your new garden, but you have a kind of a basketball court. So first of all, you have to stop the game over there, then destroy this court, then to cultivate kind of a place for over there to bring new varieties, and then just to little bit to have experience. So is it appropriate for the new apples trees over there or not? And so in order to kind of to have this kind of bigger vision what to do, we in early 90s we've got a huge problem after the Soviet Union collapse, and then we just realized that we have to think not on short-term agenda but really to have a forward-looking policy. So first time among all the post-Soviet Union countries, Kazakhstan implement institution of the strategic planning. So the government agencies in Kazakhstan start to think strategically. So they start to first time to bring kind of first notions of missions of each agency, values, priorities of the government. I think we not call it like this, but the whole of government approach first time was kind of created in Kazakhstan. First time it was a first long-term white paper of the government of Kazakhstan, which is strategic plan we call it strategy up to the 2030. And when for Kazakh people or the former Soviet Union people, just to say, okay, you are in 1996, why don't we will think about what to do in 2030, it was quite unusual. So right now, we know all the big corporates or many governments in the world thinking like for the next 20, 40, 50 years. Those time it was unusual. People thought just what to do tomorrow or next year at least, but not in 2030. What we decided is like very much also similar to the key priorities what the whole of government approach have in Singapore. Even those time was we quite developed to understand that we should focus on national security and political stability. And now, being in 2016, I can just confirm that this is kind of a key priority for the government of Kazakhstan, just to save and to develop our independence. This year we celebrate 25 years of our independence, and I think the Kazakhstani government, the people of Kazakhstan, just to prove their ability and capacity to manage and run such a big country. The rest priorities also were based on the kind of principal agenda of structural and economic reform, about diversification of our economic growth, also the well-being development of Kazakhstan, good education system, good healthcare system, good infrastructure, and professional, honored and very high-skilled civil service. This is from the very beginning was, like in Singapore and many other countries, the priority in Kazakhstan. So among the recent experience, so within the years, we built many institutions. We built the Sovereign Wealth Fund, which I called National Fund. We built the second Sovereign Wealth Fund, which is more similar to the Temasek model here, or Hazina model in Malaysia, which is about improving of corporate governance in of the government-owned companies. So since the very beginning, we have a big privatization, but at the same time, we still have many infrastructure or companies which are government-owned, like oil and gas company, like uranium company, railways company, post system company, aviation company. So recently, the government decided to privatize this. But before, in order to improve the governance of those companies, we just decided to bring them under one umbrella to create a sovereign wealth fund, which would be focused on the improving of corporate governance and appropriate management of those companies in Kazakhstan, with the idea to improve quality of corporate governance, to bring later on them to the IPO. And again, to bring the best practitioners to manage these companies, and this is also the unusual approach for the countries in the region. And the recent reform which was done is reforms on the macroeconomic area. So we also, in fiscal area, we move to performance management in a budget planning, and to the inflation targeting in a monetary policy. So I used to be governor of central bank when we moved to the inflation targeting regime. You know probably that inflation targeting is a quite kind of sophisticated stage of the development of the monetary policy in many countries. So many countries prepared to this new regime of monetary policy many years, and executing this regime many years. So for those of you who are familiar with the monetary policy, in Kazakhstan we have a policy which more based on the de facto fixed exchange rate, and because of the time to time we have to do step devaluation. It was quite unpleasant system when the people expect that like each 10 years, each 5 years, each 3 years, it should be certain devaluation of the national currency. People start to prepare it to create a kind of speculative rumors, and it was a very nervous atmosphere. And first of all, I think it was not clear rules how it should happen and what is the kind of the principles and where this kind of the one-step devaluation should stop. And 3 years ago, we decided to change this kind of unconventional monetary policy for more conventional monetary policy. So based on the recommendation of the International Monetary Fund, we start to prepare the reforms, which you know that in many countries was established in the previous 20 years, which based more kind of the other instruments like on the interest rates, and focus more on achieving a certain target on inflation. So when you ask me, the people mostly, for example, in Kazakhstan, not cares about the inflation, they are more cares about the nominal terms exchange rate. It's very difficult from very beginning to explain them that we need to focus on inflation. This is kind of the real serious reforms. And so in order to do it, you know that we have to be prepared with staff of central bank, we have to prepare with certain macroeconomic model, we have to prepare the tools of the let's say, for the monetary markets in Kazakhstan, how to manage liquidity, how to forecast liquidity, so how the banking system should work in these circumstances, what will happen with exchange rate. And exchange rate in this model should be on a free float position. Moving to de facto 20 years of the fixed exchange rate to be free float is kind of very stressful exercises, but we try to prepare it, kind of do it more in a kind of 2-3 years period to prepare the population, first to create a band, so very similar band which you have in Singapore here, and then to expand a band, then a bond in the band, but it was like a plan. And then it was like end of 2014 and 2015, you know that it's a huge paradigm changes in the region. So you know that it was like, first of all, for the oil-rich countries was huge shock in terms of the decreasing of the oil price. The oil price dropped up 2 times actually, from 115 up to the actually 32. Number 2, it was also the huge devaluation of our main strategic trade partner, Russia. The Russian ruble was devalued mostly 100%. And the number 3 trigger was when it started devaluation of renminbi in August 2015. Then the government of Kazakhstan and Central Bank of Kazakhstan decided actually not to postpone the moving and transition to the inflation targeting regime, but immediately in August we just allow the local currency to float. Those time it means that allow local currency trend to depreciation, or even to it was a devaluation. It was a huge devaluation. It was a huge shock for the people of Kazakhstan, which was like a very volatile period within the next 6-8 months. So we back to the kind of theory points which I would like to mention. So is it always better to avoid shocks, like point number 6. But sometimes it's kind of not depends from you. It's certain circumstances, and in these terms, is also the idea to be prepared, and then to have a certain communication policy of the central bank to explain to the people. And finally, so this year we have the stabilization of the exchange rate in Kazakhstan, the decreasing of the inflation rate, and so finally we are moving to the right direction. Also one more recent development is like everyone in the world after this oil price volatility was kind of a wake-up call for the government of Kazakhstan. Wake-up call in terms of everyone realized that maybe the era of the high level of the oil prices, or even the domination of the mineral resources is over. So now we see that it's for the next 5 years, even the price of oil will come back to a certain level. Definitely it will not be the previous expectation of $100 per barrel or $200 per barrel. We have to think about the kind of limits in terms of our future wealth. From the other side, the entire global economy are moving to alternative energy. And it means that it's kind of a signal for the people of Kazakhstan that we have to think about kind of our future economic strategy. What we're going to do, what we're going to do in terms of the further development. What would be kind of the future job places? What kind of skills do we have in order to not only to survive, but kind of to succeed in the future. And many governments in the world are now working under the certain kind of second generation of the structural reforms. Also, this is about structural reforms, slightly about structural reforms in Kazakhstan. The President Nazarbayev announced actually 5 key pillars of the reforms, which you can see in the slide, which we decided whatever would be in the context of the price of oil or whatever commodities, we have to really change our mind and to very fast way to move to the new agenda, which is kind of people in Singapore understand very well. It's like a rule of law, very accountable government, unified nation, and kind of very sophisticated economic development and very professional civil service. So we focused on these 5 priorities. And so this is a program which we call 100 Steps, or 5 institutional reforms. Part of this reform was the creation of the Astana International Financial Center. So we are here, team of Astana International Financial Center. So for those of you who are familiar with the financial center, so you know that we have a kind of top 10 leaders globally, like London, New York, Hong Kong, Singapore, and many others. But from the other side, we see that the many other small cities start to compete for being kind of the regional financial hubs. So among them, recently you know about the initiative in Dubai, initiative in Abu Dhabi, in Qatar, in Moscow, in Saudi. So each government wants to be kind of first mover in order to really create a good environment. So remember to back or good institutions to the previous slide where we have to prepare a certain place. So what we decided is like create everything from scratch. So the idea is to improve with certain institutions. Didn't work in the first attempts in Kazakhstan to create financial hub in 2004. We actually failed first time. What we decided is now create the completely new platform for the future financial hub. Actually, the idea based physically on a expo site platform. You know that Kazakhstan next year will host World Fair Expo 2017. So using these opportunities on behalf of the government of Kazakhstan, I have to invite you to visit us next year, summer, starting from the June 1st. But the post-use of Expo is actually, so double use of the same offices and the same buildings will be kind of part of the Astana International Financial Center. So this is 25 hectares of the world-class infrastructure. But what was the most important for us is develop really soft infrastructure. Because it's much more important rather than any kind of the buildings. And what we learn from the many financial centers in the world is first of all kind of a predictable and prudent regulatory regime. So the many countries try to do kind of a very short period, be attractive in terms of the tax exemptions, in terms of the untransparent regulation regimes, but they failed because of the people more believe when you really have a stable economic policy, prudent and transparent regulation authorities. So especially we learned this week much more what was great job was done by the monetary authorities of Singapore and many other regulations here to really to beat this prudent regime. What we decided is just to study this experience of right regulation regime, and among post-Soviet Union countries, Kazakhstan became the first who implement the principles of the English common law. So for all the global investors, very well-known principles. I can tell you that 10 out of the first 13, biggest 13 financial centers in the world working in this legislation, so-called like English common law. I think so. It's very similar to Singapore, very similar to London, very similar to the US. So it's the same clear legislation for the investors, which protected rights of the investors. And usually the system also based on the very honest court and efficient court system and arbitration center. So this is also what we learn from the region and from the many, many other examples. And also it should be world-class exchange infrastructure. We admired the experience when the people here in 1973 create world-class stock exchange. Those time, it was Chicago, together jointly with the partnership with the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. We are now on the way also to figure out with some partners. We already have a big interest from NASDAQ, from Japan Stock Exchange, from Chicago, from Shanghai Stock Exchange. So what we want is just to build really kind of the world-class based on the latest technologies like blockchain, trade platform, which is allow us to really develop the capital markets in Kazakhstan. And also very similar agenda to Singapore when the MIS first time invited the global asset managers and provide them asset under the management with idea to localize some of the activity here in Singapore on the early stage, so before create GIC. This is also opportunity for Kazakhstan. Like I mentioned, that we have a free pool of money. We have a sovereign wealth fund, which is called National Fund. We have a reserves of the central bank, and we have a reserves of the pension savings of the people of Kazakhstan, which is very similar to your CPF scheme. And I think so. This is we know how the CPF and GIC model is working. So what we want in the future also to create the same scheme. And also, because of the post-use of EXPA, we are focusing on sustainable development of our country. The financial center would be particularly focused on creating of the green financial system, like the some institution, green investment fund, or the creating of the institution which will issue green bonds. So this is also very much in a priority of the government of Kazakhstan. And the one more lesson which we learned from Singapore, and we see that the Singapore will really kind of be one in top 3 smart cities in the world very, very soon. We want to create excellent urban and social infrastructure in order to create a very good environment for the people which we will live in Kazakhstan. And so I just cross the slide. And actually 5 pillars which we would like to develop in the financial center is asset management, and also the private wealth management industry. Capital markets, which I already mentioned, and also we are like Malaysia in the region wants to be Islamic finance hub in the region, which is about around 200 million people, and the fintech. So here we are very carefully study the experience of the financial conducting authorities in London or MIS here. So how to create kind of this sandbox in order to allow to all the startups, companies to create some cutting edge technologies with idea then after the kind of, if it's kind of appropriate for regulation authorities, then to kind of inject it and to do it in business practice in Kazakhstan. So back to the all this which was I told. So this is like instead of the shock therapy, which was like a previous experience, reforms experience in Kazakhstan, we more propose like more greenhouse therapy, where we have to kind of to bring some assistance to the new institutions, like very well-educated human capital, also some tax exemptions, English common law, best practice of the regulation authorities, modern exchange, a very good urban infrastructure, which will be based on the constitution, which already based on constitutional law in Kazakhstan, which has helped us kind of to plant the completely new institutions, which would be kind of the future center of excellence of the economy of Kazakhstan, with the idea then to expand it to the rest of the economy in Kazakhstan. So let me stop here. I think so. This is like last slide which I have for you, and I am looking forward to brainstorm you and respond to your questions. Thank you very much.